I've been in the public eye since 5. And, you know, before there was an Usher, there was an Orlando Brown. Before there was a Tiana Taylor, there was an Orlando Brown.
You're a legend. No denying that.
Before there was a Bow Wow, there was an Orlando Brown. Before there was a Sierra, there was an Orlando Brown.
I feel like a lot of people understand that, you know, you just got to be careful with what you play with when you're playing with the intelligence of a certain individual.
You've seen the shady memes, the sly red carpet glances, the oops jokes on live TV. But what if the whispers weren't rumors at all? What if the hottest parties in town were the cover for a cold-blooded contamination play? Orlando Brown isn't out here fishing for clout. He's ringing the alarm on a covert infection pipeline that turned celebrity cliques into biohazard zones. The names are massive, the web is bigger, and the fallout, radioactive. Fame wasn't the only thing people caught on the way up. And tonight, the receipts aren't about who made it, but who got marked getting there. Buckle in and breathe shallow. The twist nobody wanted to print, Orlando Brown wasn't melting down. He was cracking the code. While the internet called him erratic, he was speaking in survival mode, dropping warnings disguised as wild sound bites. Because when the machine deletes truth tellers, like old tweets, crazy becomes a bulletproof disguise. He wasn't losing it, he was dodging it.
It's not a requirement.
Bro, the requirement is you gotta say no to Diddy. If it's new booty in the building, you know he gonna get it.
Don't take your girlfriend to a Diddy party.
Nigga, you can take the bitch, but he wants you. He ain't worried about that bitch. he is not worried about that bitch at all.
They called it Babel. It wasn't. Oosh kash, umaf. Wasn't a slip, it was a shield. Orlando wasn't mumbling nonsense. He was threading a message through the noise, dodging the crosshairs with syllables nobody could weaponize in courtrooms or boardrooms. He knew that spelling out Diddy's alleged network in clean, quotable English would put a clock over his head. So he scrambled the signal, masked the meaning, and lived to talk another day. And now with Sean Combs facing federal heat, those so-called random fragments line up like coordinates, and the map suddenly reads clear. He wasn't confused, he was cautious.
Diddy. Yeah, son.
But here's the part the headlines miss. It wasn't just self-preservation. Orlando's code was a blanket thrown over anyone trembling at the edge of the microphone. He made himself the decoy, the lightning rod, the crazy one, so the terrified could stay standing. The elites tried to stamp him as unhinged, parade him as a cautionary tale, send him on that one-way tour to Crazy Town. Instead, he turned the detour into cover. For years, Diddy was the gold standard, the summit every ambitious artist dreamed of reaching. In the labyrinth of Hollywood, Sean Combs was less a mogul and more a gatekeeper. His endorsement could launch unknowns into superstardom with a single nod. Everyone who breathed show business air knew one law. If your name crossed Diddy's desk, you were in the conversation for greatness. But if you wanted his seal of approval, the price tag wasn't the grind, the hustle, or the usual headline hustle. It was something you couldn't buy in any talent shop, and it wasn't posted on ticket stubs or backstage passes. It was whatever Diddy deemed necessary, and it rarely matched the aspirations you whispered to your mentor. In the entertainment world, Diddy embodied everything artists worship. He held sway at the highest summits, his parties legendary, his influence unmatched. Hollywood hopefuls didn't just crave an invite, they obsessed over it, pressuring their teams and burning entire calendars around the possibility of brushing shoulders with the man himself. Agents, publicists, stylists, everyone worked overtime to unlock that door, because to be acknowledged by Combs was to rewrite your prospects entirely. Yet behind the stories of meteoric rises, there was a darker arithmetic.
If you're on the outside looking in and you become a person that can be close to Puff, man, you made it.
Orlando Brown saw the machinery up close. To outsiders, the frenzy around these invitations looked like pure networking, but the reality was far more corrosive. The real cost wasn't hours in the studio or bets on creativity. It was acquiescence to hidden terms, participation in rituals never advertised. Many traded integrity for access, accepting the unspoken demands that circulated through the industry's inner sanctums. And while they paid the toll, Orlando kept his distance, cataloging the strung-out faces and the quiet compromises. The A-list wasn't built on pure talent or hard work alone. It was built on secret bargains, masked as opportunities, devised and dictated by the kingmaker himself. Success with Diddy meant more than a hit record. It meant stepping into arrangements where the real currency was privacy, loyalty, and silence, sometimes at any cost. Cassie's lawsuit was the match that lit the fuse, and once the smoke cleared, Diddy's empire of silence came crashing down. When Cassandra Ventura filed her explosive complaint in November 2023, it wasn't just another celebrity breakup gone public. It was the first crack in a fortress that had protected Hollywood's most dangerous open secret for decades. Within 24 hours, Combs scrambled to settle for a staggering $20 million, a payout so massive it basically screamed guilt before the ink was dry.
A lawsuit filed against Sean Diddy Combs accuses the music performer and executive of and the singer Cassie says the incidents occurred throughout her 10-year relationship.
But the damage was done. Cassie had opened the floodgates. Her allegations weren't whispered rumors. They were detailed, documented, and devastating. She accused Combs of a decade-long campaign of physical violence, and forced participation in D-fueled S-encounters called freak-offs with male escorts, all while he filmed and used the footage as blackmail. The lawsuit painted a picture of systematic mistreatment, disguised as a glamorous relationship, where a 19-year-old rising star was trapped by a 37-year-old mogul who controlled every aspect of her existence. The medical toll was brutal and telling. Cassie testified that these encounters left her battling constant urinary tract infections, mouth sores, and gastrointestinal problems from the D's. She needed IV fluids, massages, and chef-prepared meals just to recover from each session. The physical trauma was so severe that she developed an opioid addiction, using painkillers to feel numb and cope with what she described as emotionless S with strangers. Her testimony revealed a chilling detail. She preferred ketamine during these encounters because it was the most disassociative D, allowing her to mentally escape what was happening to her body. But here's the part that proves this wasn't just personal drama. It was systematic infection and contamination. The lifestyle Combs forced Cassie into wasn't just physical A, it was medically dangerous, leaving her body constantly fighting infections while he demanded she continue performing in his twisted theater. She was quite literally being infected, both physically and psychologically, while secretly seeking medical treatment to survive what he put her through. The freak-offs weren't parties, they were biological warfare disguised as S-encounters, and Cassie's settlement money was essentially hush money to keep the medical receipts buried. Orlando recognized something fundamental that outsiders missed. The industry had been his playground since childhood, and in those formative years at just 5 years old, he'd absorbed the unspoken dynamics that would later make perfect sense. While others dismissed his erratic revelations as the ramblings of a former Disney star gone wrong, Orlando had been cataloging behaviors and patterns since his earliest days on sets with Disney's royal family. He wasn't speculating, he was reporting from the front lines of an empire he'd navigated since before he could properly tie his shoes.
They know who I am. They know what I'm capable of. They want to play with themselves.
When producer Rodney Lil Rod Jones detonated his bombshell lawsuit, strategically identifying a Philadelphia rapper who dated Nicki Minaj without naming names, the internet didn't need a detective to connect those breadcrumbs to Meek Mill. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Meek didn't handle the heat like someone with nothing to hide. He detonated across every platform, offering $100,000 bounties for investigators, demanding legal warfare, and spiraling through contradictory social media storms that screamed guilty conscience rather than righteous indignation. But here's where Orlando's childhood intel becomes crucial. He wasn't reacting to court documents or internet theories. He was validating decades-old observations. When he casually mentioned that Rick Ross knows he's gay and claimed financial receipts for saying so, this wasn't random gossip. Orlando had been watching these power dynamics unfold since his That's So Raven days, accumulating insider knowledge while others were still figuring out Hollywood's basic networking rules. The audio leaks, the frantic denials, the 100K investigation offers, all of it painted a portrait of someone desperately trying to stuff secrets back into a box that Orlando had been watching crack open for 20 years. While Meek scrambled to hire damage control teams and launched into defensive Twitter marathons, Orlando simply shrugged with the confidence of someone who'd been keeping mental receipts. His allegations weren't breaking news to him. They were overdue confirmations of what he'd witnessed as Hollywood's youngest insider, finally finding an audience ready to listen to truths that had been hiding in plain sight since he was barely tall enough to reach the craft services table. When the walls finally started closing in, Orlando wasn't guessing or gambling on gossip. He was cashing in on a lifetime of observation, naming names with the unshakable certainty of someone who'd been taking notes since before his voice changed. But here's where the real panic sets in. The whispers weren't just about reputation anymore. They were about survival. Industry insiders started floating something far more devastating than career destruction: health consequences that couldn't be spun, buried, or bought off. Orlando's allegations suddenly carried a biological urgency that made Meek's social media meltdowns look less like damage control and more like life or death desperation. The $100K bounty wasn't just about clearing his name. It was about containing a medical nightmare that threatened to expose an entire network of infected industry players. When Jaguar Wright stepped forward claiming Diddy had been living with HIV since 2011 and had potentially infected at least 20 other men in the industry, Meek's erratic behavior suddenly made perfect sense. This wasn't just about gay allegations. This was about disease transmission on an industrial scale, with careers and lives hanging in the balance.
Called HIV like having like a lot of women.
Oh yeah, let's just go down the rabbit hole of all of his sins.
I'm just saying.
You want to know what's wild about that though? He faced that head up.
Orlando wasn't just exposing S encounters. He was documenting an epidemic that had been masquerading as networking for decades. While Meek offered rewards and hired legal teams, the real investigation was happening in medical offices across Hollywood, where A-listers were quietly getting tested and praying their freak-off participation hadn't come with a permanent price tag. The moment we discuss Usher Raymond, we're not just talking about another industry casualty. We're examining what Orlando Brown identifies as the original contamination source, the patient zero of Hollywood's most devastating biological operation. Everyone knows the sanitized version. 13-year-old Usher living with Diddy for mentorship. But what Orlando's revealing cuts straight to the bone of how systematic conditioning creates systematic perpetrators. Think about the psychological architecture here. Usher entered Diddy's world as a vulnerable teenager and emerged as someone who'd learned to survive by perpetuating the exact same cycle that nearly destroyed him. This wasn't mentorship, it was conditioning on an industrial scale. In a 2004 Rolling Stone interview, Usher admitted Diddy introduced him to a totally different set of ish, S specifically, describing how he'd open a door and see somebody doing it, or several people in a room having an orgy. By 2016, when asked if he'd send his own children to puppy flavor camp, Usher's response was immediate: hell no.
Usher's a gusher. And
why you never having no hoes?
I'm telling you, bro,
But here's where Orlando's gusher reference becomes devastating. It's not crude name-calling, it's identifying Usher as someone who opened the floodgates for what came next. According to Gene Deal's recent claims, Usher was allegedly hospitalized at the age of 10 due to violent A by Diddy. The trauma created a survival mechanism so twisted that when Justin Bieber entered the picture, Usher essentially delivered him directly into the same nightmare he'd barely escaped. The timeline is chilling. After discovering Bieber on YouTube in 2008, Usher became his mentor, signing him to RBMG Records. But instead of protecting his young protege, Usher facilitated Bieber's introduction to Diddy. The infamous 48 Hours with Diddy video from 2009 shows a 15-year-old Bieber being promised cars and mansions, while Diddy ominously states, "Where we're hanging out and what we're doing, we can't really disclose." Orlando alleged that this was calculated survival. Usher, knowing exactly what Diddy was capable of, allegedly fed a vulnerable teenager right into the same machine that had traumatized him. It's the ultimate example of how trauma creates trauma, how victims become victimizers just to survive the system. The freak-off parties, the medical emergencies, the IV fluid recoveries, all of it started with Usher's initial contamination and spread through his desperate attempt to redirect Diddy's attention elsewhere. When Bieber's representative finally broke silence in May 2025, confirming that Justin is not among Sean Combs' victims, it raised more questions than answers. How do you spend 48 hours in Diddy's mansion as a teenager and emerge unscathed, especially when Usher himself admitted He wouldn't let his own children near the same environment. Orlando's patient zero theory suggests that Usher's involvement wasn't just complicity, it was contamination management, using his mentorship role as a cover for delivering fresh victims while keeping himself in Diddy's good graces. The infection chain Orlando describes isn't just about disease. It's about trauma transmission disguised as career advancement, with Usher serving as both victim and perpetrator, patient zero, and super spreader in Hollywood's most devastating contamination campaign.
We made love.
Who you made love with?
Diddy, Bow Wow, Busta Rhymes.
You just told me you see Busta in the airport too. That from trying to act like he didn't know you.
Now we need to examine the celebrity who's arguably feeling the most heat right now, Will Smith. The moment Orlando Brown started connecting dots, Will's entire public relations machine shifted into full-scale crisis mode. And nothing screams guilty conscience louder than a supposedly innocent man scrambling to deny allegations that nobody officially made yet. Orlando's early revelations weren't random outbursts. They were systematic exposés dating back years before Diddy's empire crumbled. In interviews that went viral, Orlando explicitly claimed encounters with Diddy, Busta Rhymes, Drake, and Usher. He called it the Gok 3000 and Gosh Kosh Muaf, terms that initially seemed like gibberish but now read like coded survival language. People dismissed him as crazy and high out of his mind, but Orlando was documenting an industry epidemic while everyone else was laughing at his supposed breakdowns. The timeline reveals everything. First, brother Bilal dropped his bombshell about Will's alleged secret encounter with Dwayne Martin, confirming what industry insiders had whispered about for years. Bilal claimed that he walked into a dressing room and witnessed Will bent over the couch while Martin was standing up, illing him, murking him. It was murkin' there. Will's team immediately called the allegations unequivocally false and threatened legal action. But here's where Will's desperation becomes obvious. Instead of handling this privately through lawyers, he made the catastrophic decision to address it publicly during a comedy show. On December 12, 2024, at the Observatory North Park in San Diego, Will broke his own cardinal rule of never responding to gossip.
I don't have to do with Puffy, so y'all can stop all that.
The desperation was palpable, but Will was not done here. He continued referencing Diddy's alleged defueled parties. He even joked that he didn't even like baby oil, which was a direct reference to the 1,000 bottles seized from Diddy's properties. This wasn't damage control, it was pure panic. Orlando's specific allegations about Will's participation in Diddy's network weren't vague industry gossip. They were detailed claims from someone who'd allegedly witnessed the encounters firsthand. When Orlando casually mentioned that there are specific videos coming out, Will knew exactly which footage he was referencing. The federal raids had confiscated extensive recordings from Diddy's properties, including alleged blackmail material featuring high-profile celebrities. Will's public meltdown during his comedy show revealed someone terrified of what might surface. His emphatic denials fell flat because the public remembered their well-documented friendship, the Instagram live sessions, the mutual declarations of admiration, the decades of industry connections. Both him and his wife were in all that nastiness, became the prevailing sentiment online as fans rejected Will's attempt to rewrite history. The most damning evidence of Will's guilt, he stopped his own show to address Diddy allegations that weren't even trending yet. That level of preemptive damage control only happens when you know exactly what's buried in those seized hard drives, and you're praying it never sees daylight. Orlando wasn't guessing about Will's involvement. He was cashing in on decades of observation, and Will's panicked response confirmed every whispered suspicion. The empire of silence is crumbling, and Orlando Brown's crazy warnings are becoming tomorrow's federal indictments. While Hollywood scrambles to scrub social media and hire crisis managers, the medical facilities across Los Angeles are quietly running expedited STD panels for their most high-profile clientele. Cassie's $20 million settlement wasn't hush money, it was epidemic insurance. Meek's $100,000 bounty wasn't damage control, it was biological panic. Will's comedy show meltdown wasn't reputation management, it was survival mode. The question isn't who attended the parties, the question is who survived them intact. Because when the final witness testimonies hit federal court and those seized hard drives start playing in evidence rooms, Hollywood will learn that Orlando's gibberish was actually a medical alert system disguised as madness. The infection was never just biological, it was systematic. And Patient Zero is still counting his Grammy nominations while lawyers count the statute of limitations.